David, thank you so much, and it does bring back some memories when you start talking about my days in Extension. Great time to be here today, though, and fantastic program that we have all day today and into the afternoon. And certainly a highlight of, I hope your day is going to be this panel that we're starting. A great panel. It's all lined up to really talk about what I would say is a hot topic of the day, and that's called sustainability. And it's really a word that's used a lot, but often defined many different ways. And you may have even heard a few little twists of definitions already today. But what I would like to do to you is give you a little bit of a grounding, because back in 1987, there was a commission called the Brundtland Commission of the United Nations that did define sustainability for the world as well as sustainable development. And they defined it this way. They said, it's meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So with that in mind, think about what we say today on the panel. I think when you are talking about sustainability, it requires really a balance of things, like so many different things in life, a balance of environmental attention, social equity, economic demands that often are called the 3 pillars of sustainability, or sometimes referred to by a number of the corporations as the triple bottom line. So in the presentations this morning, as well as the research here next door in the Innovation Fair, I think you've seen some exhibits and certainly some great science at the university and the companies. And you've heard this morning about the importance of research, and research about food and fuel and fiber production, some of the mainstays of our lives, but also about environmental stewardship and challenges to human health. We at the North Carolina Biotechnology Center think that sustainability is really at the heart of our mission, because as we work to support biotechnology, we do it along 3 or 4 lines. One is certainly in research that you've heard about today, business, education, and also strategic policy statewide that really continues to bring long-term economic and societal benefits to North Carolinians. So today we're going to hear from this very dedicated and distinguished panel. It's a group of individuals, and we're going to hear about their companies and their organizations. And we're going to hear about what they think about sustainability and the strategies that they're using in their companies and organizations to relate to the world and to the future. So what we'll do in format-wise is we will begin with each panelist to give a very short, maybe 2-minute talk about their company. And then we'll follow that with some prepared questions that I'll give. And then after that, we hope to save some time for you and the audience to ask some questions and utilize the microphones that we have in the center aisle. So let me go ahead and introduce and get started here our distinguished panel. We'll start down on the right end. Paul Friday, who is a Deputy Assistant Chief of Staff, G7, and Director of Government and External Relations, Marine Corps Installation East, and essentially representing the military today. Next to Paul is Alyssa Farrell, Manager, Energy and Sustainability Solutions at SAS, located here in RTP, and working in worldwide marketing. And those of you that know SAS know that they really handle complex data solutions and software. Next is Arlan Peters, Vice President of Sustainability at Novozymes Company, also located here, good headquarters in Franklinton, North Carolina. And they're involved heavily in industrial biotech, and certainly a huge producer and manufacturer of enzymes that play a big role in our lives. Next over here we have Cheryl Queen, Vice President of Communications at the Compass Group, And many of you probably know the Compass Group as a major contract food and support company. Next to Cheryl is Laurie Zelnio. Laurie is the Director of Environmental Energy and Product Sustainability for John Deere Corporation, which I think many of you are familiar with through their large equipment manufacturing as well as some of their consumer products. Many of you may have a John Deere mower at home. So, panelists, thank you so much for being here today, and let's go ahead and get started with some of these questions. And let's really, as we go forward, think about that definition from the United Nations as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So sustainability is really, as I mentioned just a minute ago, spoken of as the triple bottom line. And often you hear it as the 3 Ps. I think that's what Nick Heyman taught me when I went to one of his courses. And that's people, planet, and profit. So let's kind of talk on this issue at the very beginning and hear from some of you about, I think about how sustainability at your organization really has impacts in social sustainability. And Cheryl, if you could lead us off with that from the Compass Group and what some of your ideas might be about that social aspect.
And do you want me to talk a little bit about Compass Group, sort of introduce it a bit?
Yes, please do. Let's do that. Let's start over here with Paul. And Paul, if you'll say just a couple of minutes about your company, and we'll just go across the podium.
Oh, thank you. I'm Paul Friday with Marine Corps Installations East. It's headquartered out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I'm trying to remember how to say that name now. It's changed over the years. We cover a geographic footprint from Quantico, Virginia, down to Blount Island, Florida. But the largest percentage of our Marines and training areas are located in the Carolinas. In North Carolina alone, we probably train over several million acres in eastern North Carolina. And when you add up the impact that the military has in North Carolina, it represents about a $25 billion industry, which places it second to agribusiness. Sustainability and compatible resource use is at the heart of our ability to be able to sustain our training mission, and look forward to the dialogue today.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. So Alyssa, Farrell, I'm with SAS, and many of you probably know SAS as we are really a local company. SAS is the largest privately owned software company in the world. We focus on business analytics, and we provide business analytics for each industry, I mean drug development in life sciences, or merchandise optimization in retail, or even sustainability reporting for companies across the board. And SAS really began here at NC State. I mean, our founders, Dr. Jim Goodnight and John Saul, as well as a few other founders, were here at NC State working with crop science data. And so we're very proud to have that legacy here. We also are very proud to have provided some of the funding for the first Masters of Science in Analytics, which is here at the Institute for Advanced Analytics at NC State. It's the first of its kind in the country. And this focus around analytics has been mentioned several times by speakers today. It really is the crux of not only science industries, but most industries and innovations in the world, thinking about how you can collaborate and use analytics in new ways to develop new concepts. For sustainability specifically, SAS's focus has largely been, since our founding in 1976, on our employees. You probably know that SAS was one of the top companies to work for here in the U.S. We were number one twice in a row in 2010 and 2009, and we're number 3 last year, so gotta work back on that this year. So we really focus quite a bit on employees, and that's because of our founder, Dr. Goodnight. He said that his number one asset drives out the gate every day at 5 o'clock, and it's his responsibility to make them want to come back. So we've had a big focus on employees, which is that social part of the triple bottom line. But beginning in 2007, we had a larger global focus on the environment. So we've been building out environmental sustainability projects, largely focused on buildings, because we have buildings as being a research and software development company, data centers, and then also we recently opened a solar farm. So a couple of years ago, started a solar farm because we are land rich, fortunately, bless you. And so we have a 12-acre solar farm. We operate here adjacent to our campus, and there's lots of data and learnings we have from that solar farm as well, as from the lead buildings that we have now on campus. So looking forward to the dialogue today.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gwen. My name is Arlan Peters. I'm with Novozymes. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we are the largest producer of enzymes and microorganisms in the world. It's nice, actually, to be in an audience where I probably don't have to explain what an enzyme is. But usually I do. I think what's kind of interesting in the way we use enzymes and apply them is that we take our understanding of industrial processes and our understanding of genomics and high-throughput screening to develop applications that can actually improve the sustainability of the production processes for a lot of everyday products. We are actually in about 40 different industries. We're a global company operating about 130 different countries. You may be familiar with some of the products that our technology goes into. So if you've ever washed your clothes with a bottle of Tide detergent, you'd see enzymes used there as stain lifters. They can also be used to allow cold water wash, which is one of the ways to reduce your own personal environmental footprint. But we're in a lot of different areas. Sustainability is a key part of what we think of as our business proposition or our value proposition. And we've been doing a lot to figure out how to document that and to communicate that to our customers. So looking forward to this discussion. I know that in the scientific community, they've been talking about sustainability for a long time now. I can remember when I was in undergrad and we were talking about maximum sustainable yield and all of that stuff. It's nice to see those concepts actually being taken up by the business community and figuring out how we can leverage our resources to meet the needs of a growing population. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Arlan. Cheryl, back to you.
Thanks. Compass Group is a contract food service company, the largest in the United States. We're a global organization. Our global headquarters are right outside London. Our North American headquarters are in Charlotte. You might not have heard of Compass Group. We're that big parent company, but you might have heard of some of our subsidiaries that serve some of the different markets. So there's Chartwell's that serves the education market, Morrison that serves healthcare and senior living. There's canteen vending, there's Your Rest, Restaurant Associates, Flick, who do corporate dining, Levy Restaurants, who do stadiums and coliseums and sporting events. You know, we get to do the Super Bowl and things like that. Wolfgang Puck Catering's one of our companies. So we're a very large family of companies who provide food service. And we were talking at lunch, I said, if you aren't eating in your kitchen, you may be dining with us. And we're delighted to have you. We're an $11 billion company in revenue, employ 175,000 people across North America, 155,000 here in the U.S., which makes us one of the largest employers in the country. And perhaps most important for the discussion today is we serve 8 million meals a day. So we figured out early on as this idea of sustainability and the idea that a company could have an influence on these sorts of things came to our mind. It seemed to us that the most obvious way we could impact is through our supply chain. So sustainable agriculture is the area that we have focused on most. This came through one of our CEOs with Bon Appetit, a man named Fidel Bauchio. Bon Appetit's headquartered in Palo Alto, California, and Fidel's sort of legendary story now is that he bemoaned the fact that he couldn't get a great tasting tomato. And this pursuit of a great tasting tomato and his finding of that through purchasing locally and supporting local economies, local farmers, small family farms, really laid the basis for our philosophy, this larger company in sustainable agriculture and some of the issues that go with that. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm very glad to be here. I'm from John Deere. I hope you all do have some piece of John Deere equipment in your garage. John Deere is a $32 billion company. We produce globally products for agriculture, construction, forestry, turf and lawn care, irrigation. We are the world's largest producer of off-highway diesel engines, and we also are one of the largest U.S. Companies that finance equipment, off-highway equipment in the U.S. We have nearly 60,000 employees worldwide in operations in over 35 countries, sales in over 100 countries. And our company focuses on 6 key geographies, North America, of course, being one of them, which is where our world headquarters are. We also focus on Brazil, South America, Europe, China, Russia, India, and so that's where our primary business focus is. And this is a special year for John Deere. We're actually 175 years old this year. So a long company heritage, and we've got many celebrations planned. Our purpose as a company is we are committed to those who are linked to the land. And so if you think of that line of equipment that we talked about, we are committed to those linked to the land. And so obviously our commitment to sustainability goes way back to our founder, because if we don't have land and natural resources, we don't have a business. But certainly all of us don't have food to eat, fiber to wear, fuel to operate our lives. We do help our customers, as I mentioned, cultivate, harvest, transform, construct all kinds of bridges, roads, water treatment facilities, and so on. And what I'd finally like to share with you is a framework of our sustainability strategy that has really helped focus and sharpen employee alignment around the world. And I'll speak to it in some of the answers, but we basically have an operational footprint portion of our strategy that focuses on our supply chain, our global factories, and then we have our product footprint, that which we do for our customers in terms of products, and then technologies and services. An additional part to our strategy is our communications and outreach, and then our policy standards and regulations that we're very active in, and then finally, and very importantly, is how we engage our employees. So our company, 175 years old, has come a very long way since John Deere, who was our founder, was a real person, made his first steel plow in his blacksmith shop in Vermont.
Good. So you can see we have a fabulous panel. But let's go ahead and get back to the question that I was going to propose to you, Cheryl, about this triple bottom line as we look at the social sustainability, environmental sustainability, as well as economic. If you'll tackle the first one on social, Cheryl, would be great.
Sure. Well, I'm going to tackle that by giving you an example of something we did that has been very, very impactful to our organization and to our associate, the people who work for us, those 175,000 people. You know, we had focused on this idea of sustainable agriculture for several years and did some initiatives that we felt like were very important, and we received a lot of good feedback from our guests that was important to them. And a lot of work in helping family farms and sustainable agriculture, but something came to our attention a couple years ago that I'm almost embarrassed to say we had never thought about before. And that is, we had given a lot of attention to farmers and farming families and farming communities. But we were contacted by someone from the Student Farm Worker Alliance who wanted to talk to us about the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. And some of you may be familiar with them, some of you may not, but they're tomato harvesters in Immokalee, Florida. And while that may seem, again, a little bit remote, if you eat a fresh tomato between November and May, you've probably eaten a tomato grown in Immokalee, particularly if you live east of the Mississippi. And without going into a very long story, not only were were the wages poor and the working conditions harsh and brutal, I'm sure I don't need to tell you all some of that, but there were literally instances of modern day slavery occurring there, and not just someone who sort of has a bent about this and wants to sort of exaggerate the situation, but these are cases that are being pursued by the Department of Justice. So literally modern day slavery, where people are chained in trucks at night and beaten and their money taken, et cetera. And they have a campaign where it's, if you'll pay an additional penny a pound for tomatoes that are purchased. And we went to Immokalee, we saw the situation for ourselves, talked to them, and over the course of a few months agreed not only to pay the penny a pound for tomatoes, but part of the challenge, a lot of companies had come before us and agreed to pay the penny a pound, but the money wasn't being passed down to the harvesters themselves. It was being held in escrow through an agreement among the growers that they didn't want to participate in this program. And we felt like that just wasn't right. And we weren't willing to pay a penny a pound to sit in an escrow fund. So we said we would boycott serving fresh tomatoes to our guest if we couldn't find a grower who was willing to break off from this sort of stranglehold and agree to pass that penny a pound directly to the harvesters. A penny a pound doesn't sound like much to us, does it? Really doesn't. But to the harvesters who pick for Compass Group, it's a 64% pay increase, which is just pretty startling and stark. So we found a grower who was willing to break away. It was a wonderful moment. It's been celebrated by the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. It's been celebrated by us. We've talked about it to our guest, and it's been a wonderful thing. So all of those good things, a way that we were actually able to visibly impact a community, I think the part that we didn't expect was that the impact it had on our own employees, who really were so engaged by the story, appreciated what was done. I mean, we all eat tomatoes, right? We all get it. It's a tomato, and somebody's hand had to pick it for us so that we were able to buy it in our grocery store or enjoy it in a restaurant or whatever. So I think that what we have found in the sort of that justice and people part is the social part, is the impact some of these things that we do can have on our guests, on our own employees, and on those communities.
Very good.
Thank you.
Arlan, Cheryl just gave us a very vivid story about the social aspects that they discovered in what they do every day for a living. Tell us about what happens at Novozymes as you look at environmental sustainability.
I'm actually glad that Cheryl tackled the social part because I find that, and I think many companies find this, that the social aspect of sustainability is one of the harder ones to kind of get a handle on. What is, I think, a little bit easier is sort of the environmental piece, which is, and that has a lot to do with the fact that environmental metrics and things like that are actually fairly well understood. when you're talking about sustainability. And for us at Novozymes, being a science-based company and really wanting to be able to sort of measure and document, the impact that our company has, the environmental piece is one of the parts that's a little bit more tractable. As I mentioned earlier, when you look at sort of the impact that our products have with our customers, we make enzymes. They can be used to reduce the amount of water, the amount of energy. They can be used to replace harsh chemicals and things like that in industrial processes. It kind of became clear that this aspect, the environmental aspect of our products, could be a business driver, a real value add to our customers. And the way that we went about sort of understanding sort of our company's role in improving the environment is to kind of look along sort of the value chain. So to first of all look at what are we doing at our own operations, what is our carbon footprint within our site, to look upstream as well to see what is the carbon footprint of our suppliers and also the carbon generated by purchase of energy. And then to look at what is the potential of reducing CO2 emissions and environmental impact with our products. And what we found was that by far the impact of our products, that by far dwarfs the amount of CO2 generated on site and the CO2 that is generated by our suppliers. It's not to say that that isn't important, and it's certainly an aspect of our sustainability platform. But this piece was actually the area where we could uniquely impact the world. So if you look at sort of the upstream piece, that would be, say, about 800,000 tons of CO2 per year, which translate to about 200,000 cars on the road per year. If you look at the impact of our products, last year we calculated that we can reduce the CO2 emissions of our customers by 45 million tons, which translates into about 11 million cars taken off the road for 1 year. And so that created sort of the very strong argument that really our unique ability to impact the world lies within our products. But there are a lot of things that we're doing around documentation and things like that, which we'll get into a little bit later.
That kind of leads us, I think, to things dealing with economics. And Laurie, let's go back to you about economics at John Deere. How's that sustainable?
That's actually a very timely question because our company's talked about sustainability through the 175 years of our company, and we obviously wouldn't be here if we hadn't had a focus on how do you sustain the business, both to provide our customers products and services, as well as to provide our stockholders a return on their investment when they lend us their money so that we can use that capital to build our factories and innovate new products. In terms of sustainability in our operations and what does that mean economically, it's very clear, and sometimes we have to connect the dots for our business leaders. But when we save energy, or we save water, or we save waste, all of that translates into cost reduction. And when we reduce our cost reduction, when we reduce our waste, that's good for the environment. It's much more sustainable, and it reduces costs. So we can then take that money and invest it into research and development for better products, new technologies that we can deliver to our customers. So the economic leg of sustainability is very real. And I think the important message that we try and drive both inside the company and outside the company is sustainability is not something separate or different. it's really all integrated together. And the more that we can direct that message to our employees, to our customers, that this is all connected and doing the right thing for the right reasons, it really delivers value to our business as well as to our customers' businesses.
Very good. So those are the three, what we call bottom lines that people look at in these organizations up here. But let's hear something from the military, Paul. I think for the last decade, national security has certainly been top of mind to all of us. And if you would please kind of give us a perspective of how do military responsibilities for national security correlate with a commitment probably to, I think, three things we often talk about and we've heard already is things dealing with, when you're talking about agriculture, land, conservation, and even stewardship of endangered species. How does all of that work into the national security picture?
2-minute answer will be tough. Thanks for the question. Many people are aware of the military, but a lot of folks today have never spent time on a base like maybe your parents did or others in your family lineage. But for those of you who have had some experience in the audience in the military, what I'm about to tell you is not new. For those of you who haven't served, this may be cutting out there on the edge a little bit for you. But I would say that in line with national security, one of the things that the military looks for on a global scale are how does society get disrupted? That's usually where conflicts arise. So if you're dealing with drought or other sorts of water issues, dealing with disease, dealing with lack of food, those are very critical issues for stability on a global scale. So from one level of sustainability, the military has always tried to keep an eye out for those sort of global issues, and are people getting enough to eat, and are the supply chains, operating, and is there drought or famine and disease? At a more local level, in terms of the United States, most of the military installations in this country are home to training our young men and women that go in harm's way. And in order to train, you actually take up quite a bit of real estate to do that, whether it be in the air, whether it be on the ground, or whether it be in the water. And all of our young Marines and sailors and soldiers are brought up on understanding the value of those resources, not only for themselves to use for their training, but for their future generations as they move forward in life. So we have innovative programs, and I see Dr. Brown out in the audience with NC State and several other departments at NC State that have been active in working with us to look at ways of how we keep land in compatible and sustainable use that further our ability to train, but at the same time provide a smaller mission footprint, greenhouse gas footprint, carbon footprint, and the likes. And part of that is us engaging in trying to keep farms and farming and forests and forestry, which is obviously a very big industry in eastern North Carolina and represents about 90% of the land over which we train. And the more that land can stay in that sort of compatible use is good for us. So if you think about the military and think about the installations as being, say, a large city with a mayor that has to operate as any other city would, we'd love to buy our food locally. We would certainly like to have the lands around that military installation in some sort of use that is economical, but at the same time does not put one in harm's way to our training mission. We buy fuel, so we're very big in the biofuel end of the equation. We're interested in renewable energy, of which biomass is a component part of that. We have to be a good steward of natural resources because we comprise so many millions of acres of land. And believe it or not, these bases that we now occupy, many of them were built back in the 30s and 40s at a time when no one had any understanding of how population would grow up around those bases. They were, for the most part, built in very remote areas. But as population has grown around these bases, these military installations become islands of biodiversity themselves, and not sometimes sustaining and protecting threatened and endangered species while you're trying to conduct training, they don't always go well together. So we have to look beyond our boundaries and beyond our borders and work with other NGOs and state agencies to help sustain and regrow threatened and endangered species. And I guess the last comment I would make very quickly is that even on our basis, sustainability is very key. We practice LEED in our construction practices. We're very large on geothermal where we can use it, photovoltaic, solar thermal activities. Again, biomass being a major project area of us. We have to, as services, meet energy efficiency goals, energy reduction. And for those of you, again, that understand a little bit about the military, logistics is a huge part of what we do. We virtually have to carry what we use with us on our backs when we go out into harm's way. So miniaturization, minimizing waste, anything that we can reuse is a very important aspect of our daily lives. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you, Paul. So when I run around the country telling people that agriculture is a national defense industry, I'm not too far off.
You're spot on, sir.
All right, good. Alyssa, I think we all have heard locally here certainly, and we know well that the SAS has received awards about how well they treat their employees and how important employees are, as you mentioned, important asset driving out the driveway at 5 o'clock. Let's talk a little bit about employees. How do you drive employee engagement in adopting or practicing sustainability?
Sure, it is a good question, and SAS has over 12,000 employees, so we are a fraction of the size that Cheryl is dealing with her employees and staff. But for anyone who has engaged employees for any sustainability programs, you probably have found the same thing that we have, which is employees have more ideas than you have the capacity to implement. And so there's a lot of energy. I think the challenge is harnessing that. How do you structure it in a way where employees don't get discouraged 6 months later because their idea wasn't pursued, enrolled into a larger corporate program? Back in 2009, SAS established a program called Eco Advocates, and this is a volunteer program, and there's an Eco Advocate assigned for each building. We have about 26 buildings here in Cary, and we have 110 offices worldwide. And these Eco Advocates serve as the kind of coordinator for the other Eco Advocates in the building. And they met initially and brainstormed ways that we could contribute, because people want to feel like your employer is supporting your individual contribution. So things like battery returns. We have a box where you can actually put old batteries in the copy room, and then once a month an Eco Advocate takes it downstairs or takes it to the appropriate recycling place. Chipboard. One of our security staff had an experience that really it was impressionable to him about all the medical waste that's going into the water. So it kind of ties into the theme here as well. So he actually helped to design a program where the security officers regularly go around and collect old prescription pharmaceuticals and appropriately dispose of them. So there's all kinds of ways to engage employees, and by having, using the tools like the intranet and these programs like Eco Advocates, it's a great way to encourage people to stay engaged and kind of measure and track what we're doing globally. And every year when we put together our sustainability report, we're always limited on space and long on stories that people have in their area. So I'd also say the other good point is to allow people in country to choose a program that's relevant for them in their country. There's no one-size-fits-all for what is a good program for the company, and all the companies up here are global, so you probably experience the same thing. Find something that's relevant for that location and allow employees to do something that's meaningful to them.
Good. Well, that's good perspective, but let's talk globally, Cheryl, about a company that's as big as yours that has employees all over the globe. How do you address that from an employee perspective with a company that large?
It's been kind of interesting. Exactly the same point that Alyssa just spoke of. We have found the idea of sustainability to be such an engaging topic for people. they love it. They get excited. They feel like they're making a difference. They're part of a team. And so it's what we've done a lot is not only do we tell about some of these stories to our guests who find that important and relevant to them and have an appreciation for it, but we spend time telling these stories about what we're doing and the groups we're working with to our own associates. And I want to tell you just a little bit about the power of telling that story. You know, the world in which I live, contract food service, is an industry that there is very high turnover rate. It's just the nature of the business. And so being able to engage associates, to retain people in the business is very important for many reasons, but one of them is it's very expensive to replace employees, right? So like most large companies, we do engagement surveys every year. Probably if any of you here work for large companies, you know how that works. You know, you want to measure, see if people are happy, if they're loyal, if they're engaged, all that kind of thing. So you sort of keep your, you get a pulse of what the organization is like. And we started tracking a few years ago this whole idea around asking those questions that we hoped got to the heart of how they felt and what they believed about what we were doing as a company. Just to give you some of our latest results, you know, 86% believe our company is a good corporate citizen. In the world of these surveys, if you don't work in this world, 86% is extraordinary. It's like getting 500. You know, for those of us who go by 100 as the best. 83% rate our overall reputation as excellent. It has been so important in retaining people that it's been identified as a key driver, you know, of why people want to stay at Compass Group is because they're so proud of some of these initiatives that we've done. When we say, you know, we do a big Eat Local program. It used to be like every September we did this big Eat Local initiative. Well, it was so popular that it's now a year-long initiative, and we have chefs that partner with farmers and plant you know, areas that are devoted just to raising food for Compass Group. And they send us all their photos of them in the field with the farmers, and they like that. And each one of these partnerships that we've done and initiatives means something to people. We did something with sustainable seafood that has been a very important initiative to us with Monterey Bay Aquarium. And it's so funny because you go out to dinner with anyone and they pull out their little seafood watch guide. Are you familiar with that? It's a little pamphlet. And it shows you, like, these are the good fish to eat. This is what you should avoid. Everybody pulls those out before they order their fish for dinner. We find that it is a very engaging topic and has become very important to people who work for Compass Group. They're very proud of it.
Good. Very good perspective. I think right before we open this up to the audience to ask a couple of questions, I wanted to hear probably a comment from Arlan. Customers are really the lifeblood of any business, and we've heard several people, and Alyssa mentioned that earlier as well. What do you think is the expectation of your customers, Arlan, about sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that that customers are, you know, approach to sustainability and understanding of it is probably similar to that of the general population. You'll find some customers, particularly those who are tuned to consumer careabouts, care very much about sustainability. They see that as a business driver for them. And you'll find other customers who couldn't care less. And it's also a challenge within our organization to basically, you know, find the successes within our organization, the areas that we can kind of resonate with you know, sales and marketing within our organization. It is a real challenge also to understand what our customers want and how we can connect those wants to the solutions that we provide. You know, this sustainability, I have to say, just it has not been an area that is uniformly accepted. There is still a lot of challenges in communicating the value of it, communicating the value that our products provide within that area.
Good. Very good. I think we've had some fantastic viewpoints here from 5 totally different type of organizations. So let's hear some of your questions, and if you would, just step up to one of the microphones, or you've got one to pass around. So Scott's got a microphone, he'll bring it to you. And Ann. Please raise your hand and we'll get you a microphone.
While we're waiting, can I build off of
Please do.
Arlan, your last,
Give your
your
comments,
last
yeah.
piece? Around interest, I guess, in sustainability. I can't think of exactly how the question was phrased. But one of the things we looked at a couple of years ago in trying to say, you know, what the importance of sustainability to the organization was, we looked at the people part and, you know, all the different pieces of it. But, you know, that profit piece, you know, how it really impacts the company's bottom line is a little softer to figure out. And that's the piece that, you know, resonates in the boardroom, right? So one of the things we did look at was, you know, we do a lot of RFPs. You know, companies ask us to send them an RFP to get their business. And what we have found is that no less than 99% of the RFPs we receive now have something about sustainability. Some organizations it's more important to, some less, but virtually no RFPs come in any longer without a question around corporate social responsibility and sustainability. And while I wasn't able to prove that you know, we would lose a piece of business if we didn't have our sustainability platform, there are pieces of business that it would have been it would be a very, very difficult situation if we didn't. So that maybe gives a little bit different approach.
To add on to that, I mean, we're not even in an industry as directly related as you are, and we're a software business, and banks who are looking at credit risk scoring still ask us about our corporate sustainability program. I mean, globally, we're more like 30%, but it is actually higher in Europe. So just as a point of reference, we do track that as well, and it's become a core component of even software RFPs.
One question here.
Good afternoon. Without referring to any one industry or any one of your companies, our society puts a lot of emphasis on bottom line and return on investment to the owners and investors in a company. But on the other hand, as was mentioned, the employees are a vital asset there. In a more general sense, for all of working America, what is the actual connection between the social aspect of getting those workers, in some industries, quite low-paid workers, what's the connection of that sustainability with the corporate bottom line, and how are those connected, and how are those opposed to each other at times?
Gwen, I'll take a...
Okay, please do.
All of our employees receive a base compensation, and then they also have a variable pay component, which is tied to our company performance. We call it the structure line, and so even at a trough part of the business cycle, all of us as employees have the same target. If we make decisions in every one of our jobs, from the factory floor worker to the CEO of the company, we have a target at trough of the business cycle, normal volume levels, and then peak. And so if we help the company manage our performance during trough, normal, and peak, depending on what our volumes are, then we get a variable pay component added to our base component. And so that helps drive the right behaviors and decisions around every aspect of our business goals, environmental being one of them, safety being another, cost reduction being another, quality being another. And so that's how we tie it together. And then on the employee engagement around sustainability, we do provide training to our employees as to how they should manage, recycle, use recyclable containers, save water, save waste. And they not only do that during their work cycle, but we also have activities that our employees can sign up for and volunteer to plant trees in local communities, to clean up we cleaned up the Rhine River portion by our Mannheim, Germany factory last year. We've planted trees in India. In fact, there's a group of business leaders planting trees in a local village this week in China. So those are some of the ways that we tie our employees into both profitability and sustainability.
Yeah, I would
One
like
last comment here from Arlan on that.
You know, we've done surveys of our employees to see what are some of the reasons why they choose to come to work at Novozymes. And it turns out that sustainability and our approach to sustainability is one of the top 3 reasons. So we actually view that as a key component for both talent attraction and also talent retention. This idea that you know, graduates coming out of school care about the values of their company. And so I think that both sort of in terms of you know, the products that we provide for our customers, it's important, but also in terms for developing sort of the internal competencies that we need. Sustainability is a very, very important driver.
One last chance for a question from the audience. Right over here, Scott, to the left.
Hi, thank you. You've all mentioned people, and that's certainly one aspect of this, but sometimes people buy into it and sometimes people don't. And in the social sciences, there's been an increasing emphasis on trying to understand how the individual's behavior can be influenced and make a difference in sustainability efforts. I wonder if any of you all are using or looking at some of the social science research that's out there right now to help implement your programs in a broader audience.
Who wants to tackle that? Paul?
I can tackle it in a little different perspective because, again, in the military, when someone gives an order, it tends to be the employees listen to the order. That being said, it's not your father's military, and it's a voluntary process now. And back in my day, it was a draft-driven process. So it is more like a business. And we can do things that are inducing folks to conduct in certain ways that we never had to before, like metering housing. The military used to never meter housing that folks were occupying. It was, you had a certain time of the year the heat was on and another time of the year the air was on, and if it happened to be a hot day and the heater was on, that's just the way it is. But today, the military has metered virtually everything, and those folks that live in those dwellings, if they don't behave in certain manners, they wind up paying out of their pocket in ways they wouldn't have had to pay before. That's not an incentive of the same type that you're talking about, but it does help ingrain in people's minds in ways that we never thought were possible. The other is that since most of our folks are out in the environment, 24/7, there's a great opportunity for more senior mentors to help those junior enlisted and officers understand the value of where they are and the importance of leaving it for future generations. So in both of those cases, it's been a very rewarding experience.
Paul, thank you so much for the last word. Folks, thanks for being a great audience and for your participation. And I think personally, we've had a terrific discussion here, and I hope you do too. So let's give these folks a round of applause.